So, that's, I think, the grain of salt. But the big takeaway, as well as the other study, which I think is actually much more fun to talk about, um, it just is a reminder that there's so much, we have so far to go with all of this technology still.
Yes, and just a note here that you should trust me and Charlie when we say you can take a smart person, can't just put them into any job, because we've both had a lot of jobs over the years. It's funny, as I've been interviewing for jobs, one of my lines is actually, "I've had your job before, so I understand what it's about." I'm not saying I can do it as well as you, but I have had your job over the sometime in the past 30 years. So
Yeah, and there's
yeah,
a lot of value in that. And we're going to talk, like I said, we'll talk
yeah,
more about this idea of superintelligence, right? I mean, I think people can learn things, and AI is masterful at learning things to a degree.
yes,
But there are severe limits. And let's talk about this other study, because this other
yes.
study I think is actually much more important. And you go ahead, say, because I can never say any.
Yes. So there's this other study done by MIT and Harvard that looked at LLMs, large language models, and how they solve problems. And they brought up this interesting term called Potemkin understanding, based on Potemkin villages, the fake Soviet villages that got built to show how rich and powerful they were. But basically, the understanding the idea that these models can tell you exactly how to do a job correctly, and they will convincingly say that they're going to do all the right things to get a job done. They know how to describe what they're doing, but when it comes to actually doing it, they fall short often because they don't know which particular steps they need to do to get to the end point, or they don't know which system to get to. Something breaks between here and there, much like any good consultant. And I say that having been a consultant for many years.
I think it speaks to the challenge, and again, using a human corollary for this, right? We all know the people who, they read the article, they have a basic, they've scanned something, and so they can pare it back, they can regurgitate the concepts
Mhm.
or the words, right? But when you start probing them at all, you quickly understand they don't truly understand what's going on, and that's really the state of AI. And this, by the way, isn't the slant, like what my big takeaway on this study, and I think I'm glad that it was done, because I guess there are people out there that need to understand this. But the essence of this technology, and I keep hinting to the story we're going to talk about superintelligence in a second, but the essence of this technology is that it has no actual intelligence, right? It is
Mhm.
just really good at understanding the next word. And I am personally amazed at how it's able to connect the dots, but let's not forget, all it's doing is pattern recognition. It is assembling these patterns and being able to, based on this massive knowledge base that we've given it, to figure out what sort of comes next, right?
Mhm.
And it's amazing. It's truly amazing. But it doesn't mean it understands a dang thing, right? At
Right.
all. And so that's what the study really showed, is that it is this sort of fake understanding, and which is why we need to take it with a huge grain of salt. Now, that said, that's not a slam, right? Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to use, for the most of us anyway, we're trying to use AI to solve is for automation use cases that we've been trying to solve for a long time.
Mhm.
And those automation use cases do not require this deep intrinsic understanding of how markets work or whatever, right? We need to be able to execute a process A to Z. And when we hit little snags along the way, be able to adapt to them. That's what AI can be exceptionally good at, because we can give it all the parameters, we can give it all this understanding and let it sort of figure that out. And so it's not a slam, but this idea, and it points to sort of the challenge, this idea that somehow this is a magic thing, or that it truly understands this stuff, is
Mhm.
is a complete fallacy, and that we have to get our expectations right.
Yes, one of my favorite uses for AI right now is if I have a use case or a challenge where there's 100 different parameters, I don't know how to weight that correctly. It's too fuzzy, and any attempt I make to weight all those 100 parameters is honestly probably going to be kind of weird. So I can throw all that into AI and ask, what is the typical result that happens when all of these things are taken into account? And it will at least tell me, here's the average of what happens based on what has been documented throughout human history and fed through a model. And that's a helpful starting point because it at least gives me a benchmark idea of what to expect. And then I can tweak based on my own human judgment and where I think things might have been under or overweighted, but I don't have to make 100 decisions. I can make 5 or 10 better decisions.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, it's absolutely amazing. Like I said, I think it has such tremendous power and potential. But what these studies sort of speak to is how challenged so many people are in truly understanding exactly what they are and exactly what their uses are.
Mhm.